It's time to begin looking ahead to what will be the biggest project that you do in social studies. And this is going to be an inquiry lesson plan. The big picture of this is that you are going to develop a detailed lesson plan that relates to a standard that you're going to select. And it's going to be a plan that you would teach in one class period. So you get to actually determine how long that class period will be. If you're in earlier grades, you might be able to do an hour and a half block. If you're in upper grades, you might be able to do as much as a 60 to 70-minute block, but you'll be able to determine that. So your lesson plan won't have any homework. It won't have any kind of outside work. It will be all completed within the one class, and it'll be unrelated to any other plans that you may have developed. All right, let's look at some of the overview of what it is you're doing. You're going to choose a grade from 1 through 8, and I will provide you, we'll come back to number 2 about the practice standards that you will have an option to choose from. And then it's going to be inquiry, so you've got to determine what question is it that your students are going to be working to answer, and what kind of resources are you going to provide to them to find that answer or draw conclusions. You're going to be using Bloom's taxonomy verbs, and we'll go ahead and look at that very quickly. So here is a link within the document to an example of some of the verbs. There are many other sources that will give you more, but I selected this one because it's easy to see on the screen and on this recording. You're going to use a verb that begins with level 3 or above. So please don't select something from knowledge or understanding, because we want them to get more invested in that. We want them to have to really use those critical thinking skills to do inquiry and solve problems and find solutions. Now back to the lesson plan. This is ultimately going to go on the lesson plan template, which we will look at as well. And we will also look at the rubric. But first, let's just do a quick overview of the steps that you're going to include. One thing you're going to do with this, since it is an inquiry lesson, is that you're going to develop a description of it and explain how it's inquiry and why it's inquiry. You're going to actually write out these pieces of it, and then I'll show you where they will ultimately go on your lesson plan. You're going to think about how your students are going to become involved in it. What question are they working to answer? What kind of an overarching question around the standard and the objective do you want the students engaged in? Do you want them to compare several different kinds of data for drawing their conclusions? What is it exactly that you're going to be providing with them? So all of this is kind of outside what we would consider the traditional lesson plan. And another step that goes with this that doesn't really fit clearly with the lesson plan has to do with the historical context of what it is you're teaching. So this actually relates to our CAPE accreditation. This is one of the pieces that we do with that to demonstrate, to allow students to demonstrate your ability to do this. So you're going to consider the historical relevance of what it is you're teaching, or bring it up to today's date and any kind of debates related to the concept, and you'll be using at least 2 sources. Other than that, you're following the general lesson plan format with your materials, your standard, your objective, again, using the Bloom's taxonomy verbs. You're going to have 3 very simple assessments, and these are ones that you don't have to create. You can locate these in the social studies frameworks. This will be the most detailed part, the lesson structure and procedures and your instructional. How are you teaching it? And what are the students doing through this? You'll have some kind of a conclusion activity. This is where you're helping the students understand, why do they need to know this? What is important about it? What connections can students make with this to their own worlds, so that it's not just, yeah, we did another lesson in social studies today, but it's really made relevant to your students. You're going to list your resources, materials, technology, and you're going to explain some modifications that you would use with 3 particular kinds of students with special needs. And again, you would even break these down further, which we'll look at later on. You'll describe an extension activity that you would do for those students who are really invested in this and want to learn more about it. The inquiry lesson plan description that we did from way back at the top, that's going to be your first step. That's going to go here under additional information. You do not have to do the reflection since you're not actually teaching it. And then at the end, you're going to delete all italicized info from the template. Looking at the NSU lesson plan template, see here where it says time allotted. This is where you get to determine how long your class period is going to be when you actually teach this lesson. There are some schools that are on block scheduling. So for grades 6 through 8, you could possibly even consider that you might have an 85 to 90-minute block if you wanted to do that. Notice all of the italicized words on here. These are for you, the student, as you are working on this format. So you will delete all of these on your final draft. And I'll give you a reminder of that as well. So here is where your objective will go. You might have more than one objective, but I would encourage you to really just focus on one. Your unit learning goal would be, if this is a lesson, as it likely is, part of a bigger unit, then you would explain how this lesson fits into that unit. 3 simple assessments: pre, formative, and post. Here's your structure, conclusion activity, and so on. And then down here under additional information, this is where that part that you put together back here under the inquiry lesson description, this is all going to go right down here. The reflection, we don't need to bother with that at all. You can delete all of that you are able to delete. So I will provide some individual videos about how we're going to break this out and work on it in pieces.